southwestern Arizona, as we're at the Blue Water Resort and Casino in Parker, Arizona for round number 1 of the Best in the Desert Racing Series. Hello everyone and welcome to Parker, Arizona for round number 1 of the Best in the Desert Off-Road Racing Series, along with Ford Super Duty driver Greg Fouts. I'm Ian Howard. Thanks for joining us on a beautiful weekend out here from Parker as we're at the Blue Water Resort and Casino. And Greg, for many of the drivers, they'll tell you they're very eager but very anxious to kick off this 2003 campaign.
We haven't raced here in Parker for about 4 or 5 years. A lot of guys have brand new trucks and cars, and they don't know what they're going to get yet.
And talk about the conditions here in Parker. Smooth in some areas, but plenty rough in others.
This race course is known for being extremely hard on equipment. There's lots of rocky rollers and washouts, along with high-speed freeway wide dirt roads that guys will be able to do 120 plus on.
Well, it should be very exciting and competitive, as you alluded to, as we're just moments away from kicking off round number 1 of the Best of the Desert Off-Road Racing Series here from the beautiful Blue Water Resort and Casino of Parker, Arizona. And when we come back to the Blue Water Resort and Casino, Parker 425 will be ready to kick things off. So don't go away as you're watching round 1 of the Best in the Desert Racing Series right here on the Outdoor Channel Speed Zone. Welcome back to the Blue Water Resort and Casino, Parker 425, and round number 1 of the Best in the Desert Racing Series. Ian Howard and Greg Fouts along with you on a rather cool, crisp day here in southwestern Arizona. Temperatures in the low 50s and a pretty good breeze out there on the race course. Forecasters actually saying we may have a chance of rain. And with that said, we're nearing race time as the cars are approaching the start line here in Parker, Arizona. And Greg, the teams will face a rather challenging race course out here today.
The race course this year is about 425 miles in total distance. It's comprised of 3 laps, about 135 miles apiece. They're going to see rough and very technical terrain here, and also some very fast, high-speed roads.
We have 123 entries set to take on the Parker 425, and here are some of the lineups, including a few to really watch out for.
In Class 1000, you got a team of Eli Yee and Doug Fortin. Doug Fortin's normally in the Unlimited buggies. He's stepped down here to help him out a little bit. Also to watch out for, you've got Dick Wyrick and the team of Rick Ellison and Bill Hernquist. On top of that, in Class 1100, you've got a few to watch there. Tony LaCitra's team, he's got a lot of experience in the 1200 class trucks, along with Toby Guerin and the team of Jeff Moore. In the next class, the 1200 series class, you're going to need to look out for John Baker and Kevin McGilvery. Kevin McGilvery's had a lot of wins in that class and a lot of experience. The team of Rick L. Johnson and different team of Rick D. Johnson, not related, but those guys are very competitive and win almost all these races.
Well, the teams went through time trials and inspections on Friday, and with race time approaching, they'll have 16 and a half hours to actually complete this race. Well, the first team at the line is the Ford 1402 Kyle Taylor, Smokey McKeel, Unlimited Trucks class as they await the green light. Anticipation, I imagine, Greg.
Yeah, that truck's brand new, Ian. They just got it done, and Kyle Taylor's very fast. He's a competitive driver. He's one to watch out for.
Well, the Ford took off, and as the other teams prepare at the start line, let's get a driver's perspective from a fellow 1400 class driver in Darren Skilton.
Parker's a unique event because it's so long, but it seems like it's not. So you're sprinting right off the start. So it's the key to a Parker race is be there on the 3rd lap and be within a shout of winning. And if you're there after 2 laps and you got a shot, then you can go for it.
Darren says it's important to be in the mix after a couple of laps if you want a chance to win here. And here's Damon Jeffries.
Yeah, the Herman Motorsports vehicle is also a Ford truck.
Well, defending class champion from a year ago. Now a look at truck 1406, the Corona Extra machine. Steve Sauerpass, Rancho Say, California, along with Tom Jevis, Santee, California.
This truck, the ballast to midway is probably the most difficult part for this truck, just because it's not really made for the big bumps. The graded roads and those things, the truck works really great on, but it's just hard on the truck, and you have to be patient through that stuff. So I'd say that was the most difficult thing. For Ryan, I'd say it's probably the dust.
The 5100 series class is made up of 4 entries local, all from Parker, Arizona this year. Class 8000, people to watch here, you got Kurt LeDuc, obviously very fast, a lot of experience, including some Paris to Dakar. Keith Moore and Tommy Bradley coming up from Mexico for a change. In Class 8100, Dave Morrison and Manny Esquerra. Manny Esquerra is a local Parker guy and knows this race course very well. Chad Holland, the Hummer, and the team of Greg Fouts and Steve Wheeler to watch out for there.
And here's the 15-year racing veteran, Kurt LeDuc of Rialto, California, formerly of Paris de Dakar fame, former Baja 500 champion. He's basically done it all in off-road racing. Began his career at the age of 32, now 47 years of age, and he's off and running in the Parker 425.
Class 1500 lineup, we've got the team of Dale Everts to watch out for, team of Mark and Gary Wyrick, also John Gahn of the Gahn family, and team favorites Troy and Tim Herbst.
Dale Everts now on the line, his inland truss machine awaiting the start. He's teamed up with Ernie Castro Jr. Clouds still in the sky, chance of rain as we mentioned, as Mark Wyrick is on the line, onboard camera from his vehicle as he takes the start. What's really going through a driver's mind at this point of the race?
Boy, they're full of adrenaline right now. The Wyrick guys are pushing that thing right up to the limit.
Glendale, Arizona resident Jeff Darlin getting set now as he takes off 15 seconds behind Wyrick. And right behind him, Chevrolet has an entry in the 1500 class. There's John Gahn. The Goodyear Valley Performance vehicle of Pat Dean on the line now. Another entry in this very tough 1500 class. And here comes the Herbst clan. What more needs to be said about this team here? Very accomplished in the off-road racing circles.
That's a unique vehicle too, Ian. It's a truggy. And then what that means is it's a front engine almost like a truck, but without a body on it. And the Herbst family have really got this thing figured out. They've won many races, including the Bajas and several others.
The Herbst racing team taking off down California Avenue, starting point for this Blue Water Resort and Casino, Parker 425. One of their big accomplishments, winning the Nevada 2000. As we get a look at some more lineups here, Greg.
In the 7300 class lineup, you get a couple teams that are really watch out for. The team of Rob McCachran and Steve Olagus, and also Aaron and Ian Dixon brothers that have won a lot of races in that class too. In the 7100 class, you've also got a bunch of tough competitors there. Malcolm Benji and Mark Hansen have raced in that class several years. Also Bob Graham and Tim Brady. In the 7200 class lineup, you've got Larry Rosler, a well-known motorcycle racer, has been racing for many, many years. He's one to look out for. Also the team of Sean and David Wanzak and Hector Salazar. They're going to be tough to beat in that class.
And to the line now, Sean Wanzak, all of 20 years of age, Lake Havasu City, Arizona, racing with his father, David Wanzak. And attrition as this race wears on, 123 entries making the start, as the Wanzaks do here down California Avenue. But attrition should play a major role in this one. We're going to see very rough conditions out in the desert.
Yeah, this track is very, very competitive. It's very tough in the first section. It's rough. It's very technical. There's a lot of rocks and a lot of gotchas that people just you can't see unless you're right on top of them. The onboard camera here will give you a great view of how rough it really is and how technical these vehicles are to handle.
Well, Parker over the years has always marked the start of a brand new season of off-road racing, and the legend is certainly living on here as Wanzak has now entered the dirt part of the race course here. So the Parker 425 is underway under cloudy conditions, and we'll be back with plenty more race action, so don't go away as you're watching the Blue Water Resort and Casino Parker 425 right here on the Outdoor Channel Speed Zone. Welcome back to the Blue Water Resort and Casino Parker 425 as the sun is rising. As we come back to race action now, Gary Dirks, Mark Porter of the Trick Truck class, Anthem, Arizona and Cave Creek, Arizona, respectively, having a good run, but they, as every other competitor knows, that conditions will change all along the race course.
Now you're on board with Mark Wyrick. He's running down the main section of the pit area, just going out on this first lap, it looks like. In-car camera, you can see the suspension really working on that car.
Well, that's part of the 1500 class, and Greg, 1500, very competitive. We should see them running at the front of the pack.
The 1500 class is unlimited cars, which means they can run any engine, any chassis combination that they want to. You can see the suspension's unlimited. Well, it looks like Wyrick just took his in-car camera out for the race there, Ian.
Well, suspension working very well for Wyrick. However, that onboard camera may be gone for the rest of the afternoon. Kurt LeDuc, one of the more prominent off-road racers out here, 3 wins, a second place last year, including second at the Las Vegas 200, won the Baja Mexico 300. He's always going to be at the front of the pack. Tim McDonald, along with Sean Cummings.
The 1400 class trucks are pretty unlimited also. They have to have the same body and engine combination, though.
Mark Miller, Ryan Arciero, 2 prominent members out here. Miller from Phoenix, Arizona. Arciero from Foothill Ranch, California, trying to stay with the leaders up front. And here's Bucky Strunk. Well, dust and wind will be a factor as this race wears on.
Preparation mostly, and a good team. And we had got the team, and we prepped the car. Jeff and pretty much prepped the car all himself, Jeff and Greg Anderson. did all the prep, and that's probably most of it. You win the race in the garage.
Kurt Contillis talking about how difficult setup is for this race here in Parker. And this is the high-speed danger zone about 40 miles into this race, the Sonoran Desert. Corey Cook, 1100 class.
They're starting to get tight in here now, Ian. They're running fast. The classes are still close enough together. Only 40 miles into the race, so attrition really hasn't started to take its toll yet.
On board now is Sean Wanzak, racing with his father David. Tricky part of the race course coming up here.
Yeah, it looks like right here he's missing a corner. He's going to go over the berm here a little bit, and looks like he's in the dust of another car. That's pretty good onboard camera.
Talking with many of the drivers before the race, as we have another onboard shot here of the race course. They'll tell you many of the turns can come out of nowhere and basically bite you.
The onboard camera sure gives you a good visual of how rough it is and how those turns just come up out of nowhere.
The 7214 vehicle, a Ford-powered machine. Bill Massey, Mike Davis. 7200 class, Massey of Lake Havasu City, Arizona. Davis from Las Vegas, Nevada.
The 7200 class are small or mini trucks that are almost unlimited suspension and restricted motor. They're fiberglass fenders and things like that, but still almost a stock truck, Ian.
And here's Tony McLaren along with Tom Cruise, Veneta, Oregon, and Eugene, Oregon, respectively. Right now in 4th place in the 1000 class.
1000 class is actually an unlimited suspended buggy with restrictions on the engine and transmission.
8100 class vehicle, the Hummers, Chad Hall, Dr. Kort Staskoff, Reno, Nevada, Fallbrook, California, respectively. Had some success last season, a 5th place, a 1st place in the Nevada 2000, and then a 2nd place at Tonopah.
The 8100 series trucks are actually the stock production class full-size trucks. You can't change very much. They have to basically run in the stock configurations you get them from the dealership, Ian.
More 7200 class action, the GMC machine of Eric Harden, his brother Jared, two of the youngest competitors out here, just 20 and 26 years respectively, both from Orange County, California.
This is one of the only Chevrolet entries in that class, and the Harden brothers bought that from the McPherson's team a couple years ago and have been doing pretty well on that truck.
Last year's champion and 8100 class driver Manny Esquera talked about racing on his home turf here in Parker, Arizona.
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, you got an advantage, I think, just because you're in your own hometown, is what I call the home turf, and I think it's a big advantage.
And every driver will tell you there's many challenges facing them here in Parker, Arizona. And apparently Mark Dye and Tori Porter have found those challenges. They've gone over here. So we've had an incident on the race course. Looks like some broken parts there.
Yeah, it looks like the wheel's laying there on the ground next to him, Ian. I believe what looks like they broke a spindle there on that ditch.
Well, racing aboard that Chevy Avalanche as we now catch up to Tony Lasitra, along with Joe Lasitra, part of the 1100 class. These buggies running up front could vie for an overall win here this afternoon.
The 1100 class actually is, not quite unlimited. They have restrictions on the chassis. They have to have a beam-style front end and a restricted engine, so they can't go as fast as the unlimited buggies can.
1139 buggy Harley Lentner back in 2nd place along with Rusty Lee, having a good run here along the flats of Parker, Arizona.
These 1100 cars really run close together too, because they're about equal in speed.
1133 back in 3rd place, Mark Brownell along with Ron Dahlke, both from Tucson, Arizona, for this Cheneth.
Yeah, they're getting into a little rocky area here now where they're going to have to be a little bit more careful with what they're doing. You got to watch the tires, be a little bit more careful about how you go into corners in these really rocky areas.
Another father and son tandem, David and Steve Scaroni, 1200 class competitors right now.
I think David's driving this truck today in the 1200 class. Oh, there we go. He's getting a little sideways in, but sure did a good job saving that one. 1200 class are exactly prepared vehicles.
Well, we talked about attrition being a factor out here, and another incident. This one, the trick truck of Jesse Jones, he apparently rolled it, and he was the overall leader up to this point, but Glenn and Bruce Greer on top of the scene trying to get him out, but it looks like they've run into a mess of their own. So while these teams try to straighten things out on the race course, let's take a break in the action as you're watching round number 1 of the Best in the Desert Racing Series from Parker, Arizona, presented by the Blue Water Resort and Casino. Welcome back to the Blue Water Resort and Casino. Parker 425 and round number 1 of the Best in the Desert Racing Series, along with Greg Fouts, I'm Ian Howard. And before we went to commercial break, Jesse Jones rolled it with the overall lead. A tough break for him indeed. However, the Best in the Desert race support vehicle on hand trying to get his truck right-sided. The question is, will he get back in the race?
He'll get that thing going again. That's actually an official who's giving him a hand, and obviously nobody got hurt. You can see how hard he rolled the thing. There's just holes in the ground where he hit.
And as we get back to race action, Robert Scarlett, Dwight Holder, both from Phoenix, Arizona, currently in 4th place in the very tough 1400 class.
That's actually an ex-Robbie Gordon trick truck that these guys bought and have been racing just a few times. They don't have a whole bunch of experience, but looking pretty good there.
Well, conditions changing out here. We've gone from cool and cloudy to this. Dusty and dry, and visibility almost none. And some good action now in this 8,000 class. John Melsheimer, Brandon Nickel, both of Bend, Oregon, trying to hold off Mark Ottersberg and Rick Thomas. These two Chevrolets kicking up all kinds of dust.
Yeah, the truck in front's really got an advantage with the clean air. As you can see, as the dust rolls off, the guy catching him's got to work through that without crashing into a rock or making a big mistake trying to get it done.
Well, Ottersberg and Thomas right there behind Melsheimer and Nickel, and back there in behind is Keith Moore, William Branco, both from Phoenix, Arizona, currently running in 2nd place behind Kurt LeDuc. Now, you would think this 8,000 class would challenge for the overall lead. We've seen some attrition so far, but these big trucks put out a lot of horsepower, a lot of miles per hour.
Yeah, the 8,000 class itself is actually an almost unlimited class. They have to have a stock frame to start with, and the engine and transmission and body must match. So if it's a Chevrolet, it's got to have a Chevy frame, body, and engine.
And maybe a surprise here, maybe not a surprise, but the overall leader, Dale Eberts, along with Ernie Castro Jr., not letting off the gas, currently in the lead in the 1500 class, but also the overall leaders for the race. The technology involved in off-road racing has steadily progressed through the years. And for more on some of the latest in the technological advancements of the sport, here's this edition of the Outdoor Channel Speed Zone in the Cockpit, presented by Fox Racing Shocks.
The Inland Trust Unlimited open wheel car is Jimco chassis, built in Santee, California. Includes Fox Racing shock, BF Goodrich tires, 21 inches of wheel travel at all 4 corners, powered by a Toyota V6 engine built by Fat Performance. It's a 5-speed transmission. It's shifted without a clutch. When it comes time to shift, you let off the gas and go ahead and make your shift. The way the gears are cut allows you to do that. The capabilities of these cars all relies on the suspension and the geometry of the suspension and the way the shocks are set up. These Fox Racing shocks are 2.5 inches in diameter with a coil carrier back here behind. And this shock just really holds the carrier, keeps that in place, and provides the spring for the car. But the fine tuning is in this shock. This is the bypass tube shock, and Fox provided us with a shaft, which this shaft goes into this body. And as it does, the oil, it has to flow through oil, and the oil has to flow through this piston. There's holes here that during the compression stroke, the oil has to flow through these holes and past these valve shims. Now the rebound valve shims are a little bit easier to see, and they're just shims. There's varying numbers, and you can add shims, take away shims, and that controls how much oil is able to flow through and how quickly. But what these shocks also have are these bypass tubes. So when the piston's forced through here, oil is being bypassed around the piston, so it doesn't actually have to go through the piston. And at this point here, it's being bypassed by 2 tubes. But then when it gets to this point here, it's only being bypassed by 1 tube, so it gets a little bit stiffer, more oil has to flow through the piston. Then when it gets to this point here, every bit of oil has to flow through the piston and past the valve shims. And that makes it, keeps the car from bottoming out when you do really hit something big. It allows it to be soft and give an easy ride here, but then when you really need it, it gets real stiff and keeps the car from bottoming out when you get to this point. The tire we run during the races is a BF Goodrich Baja TA KR. Now this rock here, you could imagine hitting something like that on the freeway in a passenger car would probably wipe out the whole car. Where this car, you could go freeway speeds or faster, up to maybe 100 miles an hour, and hit something like that. And the tires here is tough enough to take it. And the tire itself will protect the wheel, prevent the wheel from being bent. Pretty amazing what these tires are capable of.
And from that in the cockpit with Dale Eberts, we come back to race action. It's the Blue Water Resort and Casino, Parker 425, and Eberts and company putting all that technology he talked about to the test have the overall lead.
Well, that car's really, really working good right now. You can see it just soaking up the bumps. The body's not really moving up and down a whole bunch. He's making good time right now.
And in behind him in second place, the 1518 machine, Chuck Hovey, Escondido, California. He's in the pursuer role, trailing the Everetts right now. So as race action continues here from Parker, Arizona, we'll step away for a moment as you're watching the Blue Water Resort and Casino Parker 425 right here on the Outdoor Channel Speed Zone. Welcome back to the Blue Water Resort and Casino Parker 425 as we go on board Damon Jeffries, the Herman Motorsports Ford F-150 out in front in the tough desert terrain, taking its toll on the drivers so far out here, Greg.
And look how rough that is, Ian. You can see it in the camera. It's shaking so much. The whoops are just, they're huge, but that truck has over 30 inches of front wheel travel.
Another onboard camera, this one mounted on Sean and David Wanzag's entry aboard their Ford 9-vehicle field in this division. The Wanzags from Lake Havasu City, Arizona, having to contend with a lot of dust, so visibility is down for them.
Here we got Mark Porter and Gary Dirks driving their new trick truck. Larry Ragland's giving them a hand at this race. You can see they're being pretty aggressive trying to keep up with the pack there.
More 1400 class action. Robert Scarlett, Dwight Holder in behind, another Arizona-based team. And even though they're trailing in this one, you want to remain patient as we get a look now at Chuck Hovey and his Palomar Communications entry.
Here comes Gary Wyrick. It looks like Damon Jeffries is right behind him in that Herman Motorsports truck again. And it's tough.
Lots of dust being kicked up in behind. David Jeffries trying to make his way through that wash of dust, the helicopter in overhead. Troy Herbst now racing his Ford Truggy out of Las Vegas, Nevada, right in the thick of things, competing in the 1500 class. Actually first overall in the Terriblestown 250 last April. Mike Williams, Blaze Jackson, part of the 1100 class aboard their Masterpiece Engineering sponsored entry. Williams from Prescott, Arizona, Jackson from Valley Center, California.
Here comes Cody Kruger and Eric Davis, 7200 truck. You see the aggressive camera on the front end of that thing, and he's getting a little sideways in the corner, it looks like there.
Gary Wyrick approaching the midway point, heading towards the pits here on this 135-mile course. And when you watch these drivers, you can tell how hard they're pushing it by how they're driving the course.
Yeah, this is Rick Johnson now and driving the first Toyota-powered 1200 truck. He's pretty aggressive. He's a winner from a long time back.
Team starting to enter the pits now, Greg. They're set up on the course every 30 to 50 miles. Chance to visually inspect the vehicle, maybe change a tire, refill. The 1401 machine, headed by Damon Jeffries, his younger brother Casey. A little wide there through the turn. It's vying for an overall on this one, so the key is to be aggressive, but also be patient, stay within your means.
Well, the terrain here, too, it's kind of soft, and it's easy to overshoot those berms, especially when you're being aggressive as a driver. Here comes Kurt LeDuc in the Skyjacker 8000 truck again. Looks like they're running pretty smooth here, Ian.
Kurt LeDuc actually built this vehicle for Walker Evans, who raced it some 10-plus years ago. Dick Sasser now the current owner, and LeDuc making old technology work in the present day. Tommy Bradley in the pits here. Take us through a pit stop here, obviously refueling.
Well, if you notice, they're only putting one can in, so that's just a splash and go. They're not filling the truck. That truck could probably hold at least 3 or 4 of those 10-gallon dump cans. It looks like they're at the midway pit now, just getting a splash, making sure they have enough to get to the finish.
Dale Everett's vying for the overall win here today. He and his crew have put together just a magnificent, solid ride here for this Parker 425. And they're also approaching the midway pit stop.
You'll notice he's driving a little bit aggressive, but he's right within his realm. He's in a good zone right now where he's got his head on straight.
Teams continuing to pit here. There's actually 5 pit stops along this Parker race course. Rob McCachran along with Steve Allegas now in the pits. The Kia Sorrento of Darren Skilton, who calls Long Beach, California home, performing well. Third right now in the 1400 class behind both Mark Miller and Damon Jeffries. The Ford F-150, part of the 1200 class, John Becker, Kevin McGilvery. Lots of experience with this team. McGilvery, lots of wins, lots of races under his belt, leading a good hand here.
Yeah, Kevin's raced these 1200 series trucks for a lot of years. He used to race a Chevy, and it looks like he's teamed up with Becker now.
7100 class action now. Ford Ranger, Malcolm Vingy along with Mark Hansen. Vingy, also a lot of experience he brings to the table here, racing for many years. More 7300 class action. Ian and Aaron Dixon actually built this Ford from scratch right in their own garage and actually competing with some of the top teams.
These guys are brothers, and they built that from scratch and have won the last couple races in that truck.
8100 class action now. The Hummer of Terry and Eric Henn. You watch off-road racing, it's really competitor against terrain. We're seeing it right here.
Yeah, you really have to race the track, Ian. You want to beat the guys, but if you don't get to the finish line, it just doesn't work out.
Well, the Hummer continues to do well out here in Parker, and now the Jeffries brothers vying for an overall lead.
They've had some problem because the front end's missing on that truck now.
Mark and Gary Wyrick, second place behind Dale Everts in this very tough 1500 class, about 10 minutes back. What do you do at this point to try to make up ground as we see the Kia pass by?
You just have to keep your head on straight. The biggest thing you can do is not make a mistake.
7100 class action. This is the 7113 machine Toyota. Sean Graham along with Bob Graham, another father-son duo. 3100 class action, Niall. Mike Falkowski along with Steve Coward, both from Ramona, California, competing in the 3100 class aboard this Ford entry.
Here we got John Baker in the 7300 truck, sponsored by Bear. That's a new sponsor for these guys. That's a stock production truck again, looking pretty fast there.
And now Tommy Bradley, his Chevrolet powered entry, currently in second place in the very tough 8000 class behind class leader Kurt LeDuc. Looking cool, calm, collected here on this bows part of the race course.
Yeah, he's running pretty smooth, but you can see the speed in that. He's getting on the brakes pretty hard for that turn.
And as the desert begins to warm up on this beautiful winter day, we'll step away from the action for a moment as you're watching round number 1 of the Best in the Desert Racing Series. It's the Parker 425 right here on the Outdoor Channel Speed Zone. Welcome back to Parker, Arizona, and the Outdoor Channel Speed Zone coverage of the Blue Water Resort and Casino Parker 425. And as we come back to race action, Steve Serapis, Rancho Santa Fe, California, along with Tom Jeevis of Santee, California, making their way.
Yeah, they're really moving fast here. They've got to be doing over 100 miles an hour on that road.
And up front, it's Dale Everts along with Ernie Castro Jr. These two have been running more than consistent all afternoon long. In fact, vying for an overall title, and it's so important as the race wears on. Don't let your mind wander as a driver.
Yeah, you've got to stay very focused. As you can see here, this is Scott Douglas. That's his brand new Explorer that they just got built.
And now the action to our 1100 class, the Cook's Equipment team, Corey and his father, Terry Cook, in this very competitive 1100 class. 1500 class action, we've watched the Herbst race team run an aggressive and air-free race up to this point, and currently back in 4th place is this team, 1510. One of the top drivers in all of off-road racing is competing here in Parker. And for more on the Skyjacker race team led by Kurt LeDuc, here's this edition of the Outdoor Channel Speed Zone Racer Profile presented by Skyjacker Suspensions. For 15-year racing veteran and Rialto, California resident Kurt LeDuc, his start in off-road racing came through working in a parts shop.
Started off getting out of high school and started a company in the off-road business, selling four-wheel drive parts, and did that till I was 32 years old. And you know, I read a bio on Walker Evans said his first desert race when he was 32 years old, and I thought, and you know, he's a legend in this sport. You're never too old to do it.
And with the help of an off-road racing legend, LeDuc decided to go full bore into the sport.
Just came out to my first desert race with Walker Evans as one of his pit crew and thought I could do this. And went back home to Massachusetts and asked my wife, Nancy, if she wanted to go to California. And she said, yeah, so here we are.
And LeDuc's racing career has spanned all different types of courses, but it's the open course that suits him best.
I raced a lot of tough trucks, a lot of short course racing, raced in Wisconsin, and just fell in love with the desert. I don't know what it is. There's a certain pull of having a car sideways in the dirt, and when you get out here and to this great Nevada desert or into Mexico, it's just you know, I wear a smile for 3 or 4 hours at a time.
And with all his experience, LeDuc knows a thing or two about preparing an off-road vehicle.
Fabricate them from the frame up, hand pick every part that goes on them, including our Skyjacker shocks that we're helping them develop. You know, the BF Goodrich tires, I don't think anybody makes a better tire. The wheel companies we're involved with Circle Wheel and OMF feedlocks. I mean, every part of the cars that I race are hand-picked by me. And, you know, it's 20 years of trying to get to the finish line. I've got a definite checklist of the products that can put us in the finish line.
And much of Kurt's success stems from his ability to read a course and the competition.
Well, when you race, you know, everybody says when you go to, you know, Parker, who's the car you got to beat? And I always say it's Parker. You've got to beat the desert. I read you know, the dirt. I read the roads in front of me. I can tell the guys that are in front of me how hard they're pushing by how close they're getting to the edge. You know, who's knocking the rocks in the road. You can tell.
And staying sharp mentally has helped LeDuc enjoy plenty of success throughout his racing career.
As a driver, I get to a certain point on the racetrack And you just absolutely can't let your mind wander. So you're wondering what's the next thing you have to watch out for. You don't try to memorize the course. You don't have like a rally book written. So you're, at mile 330, I want to know what's the next thing after mile 330. And I don't use numbers, but what's the next thing after Goldfield? Or what's the next thing after the Mina Pit? And, there's a corner you're watching for or bad bumps that you've got in your head. Pre-running's a part of it, with Casey escorting us, allowing us to see the course. It really helps us, So it's what's next.
And from that racer profile with Kurt LeDuc of the Skyjacker race team, it's back to more race action from the Parker 425. Jesse Jones was the overall leader early on until he rolled it. Good to see him back in the race, trying to compete, trying to make up some ground.
That truck's working good. Obviously didn't damage it too much in the rollover.
Bud Feldkamp along with Doug Peterson here, 1500 class action.
Again, that's another unlimited car, and they're on the high-speed roads coming out of Midway, it looks like.
Well, they're currently back in 10th place in this tough class. However, very young team, both 24 years of age. And now the 4th place vehicle in the 4100 class, Noah Pike and Gail Pike.
That's actually a stock sport utility full-size truck.
And it's tough to catch the leaders, Mark Stein along with Mike McCombs. They've really put the hammer on the rest of the field. And the Hummer, Chad Hall, Kort Stoskopf, 8100 class action right now in 2nd place.
It almost looks like they got a rear tire going flat there. He's taking a little easy in the corner, but looks like he's still maintaining a pretty good pace. I know they're probably about a minute behind the leader right now.
And still more to come as you're watching the Parker 425 presented by the Blue Water Resort and Casino right here on the Outdoor Channel Speed Zone. Welcome back to the Outdoor Channel Speed Zone coverage of the Blue Water Resort and Casino Parker 425. Well, fans of all ages enjoying the action out here this afternoon, and maybe even some future off-road racers. And Greg, last pit stop area we're approaching here in Parker, Arizona before the finish line. The 1412 vehicle, Robert Scarla and Dwight Holder currently running 4th.
Yeah, this is the only pit that there's not a speed limit in. Also, all the other pits have a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, so you see trucks come through here really fast.
Very accomplished racer in his own right. Right here, Manny Escara, along with Dave Morrison, raced for Fords for a good number of years. In fact, the 8100 class champion from a year ago.
Eric and Terry Henn here in their Hummer, trying to make it around for the laps. I think they're probably running in about 4th right now, Ian. They're just trying to get that thing around. They've had some difficulties in the past.
The LaCitra family here, father and son tandem, Tony and Joe, racing aboard this 1100 class entry. Actually raced in the 1200 class truck division for a many number of years, making the transition look fairly easy up to this point.
We've got Mark Stein and Mike McComas here in their Expedition. That's a 4100 series truck, and they're, I think, running in the lead right now.
Well, it appears they're in good shape to capture a victory. Stein, part of that Ford factory racing team, has won numerous championships. And in behind, Emmett and Justin Brinkerhoff back in 3rd place in the 5100 class. Ryan Stewart of Chino, California, and Rusty Stewart, Lake Havasu City, Arizona, competing in this very tough 1500 class. It's been the class that has dominated so far out here this afternoon. Some work in the pits now. Jesse Jones, his team, looking over the vehicle here. He was leading in the trick truck division until he rolled it. You can see the after effects there, some oil on the side panels there, but nonetheless inspecting the vehicle.
Got Dale Everett's now coming into the main pit area. He's out front. He's trying to keep that thing clean. Boy, he sure is making good time.
Here's the Kia Racing team. Darren Skilton currently running 3rd in the 1400 class.
He's coming into the pit. They're going to have a look at something. They don't have fuel out or anything, so they're probably just making sure he doesn't have a mechanical issue. Going to look everything over, get him going again. You got the Troy Herbst Truggy coming in now, also on their 3rd lap. Everybody's a little nervous going on the 3rd lap, because really now is when you open everything up and start racing.
Well, the Herbst Racing team back in 4th place in the 1500 class. Been knocking on the door all afternoon long. Haven't had an answer yet. Here's Kurt LeDuc, arguably the most recognizable name competing out here. He was featured in our racer profile, 47 years of age. 1000 class leaders, Eli Yee, Doug Fortin racing for Jimco, both from the Southern California area, both trying to hold off Rick Ellison and Bill Hernquist.
Got Kevin Graves in the pit again here with his brother Kent. Looks like they're going to do a driver's change and maybe a little maintenance on the car getting out of Midway there.
Again, the pit stop, refuel, chance to check the tires. You want as many eyes on the vehicle as possible, also to visually inspect it. Looks like that's the case down here. And a tough break here. Damon Jeffries leading in the 1400 class. Apparently he's lost power out in the middle of nowhere.
Looks like they're done. He's dead stopped, and that's not a normal thing for them.
And a good pass here. Jesse Jones going right past the father-son team of Bob and Sean Graham along the outside.
Yeah, Jesse's truck is, if you remember, he rolled it early, but it looks like he's running real strong now. It doesn't look like they're having any trouble.
Rick Romans, Big Bear Lake, California, currently 6th in the 1500 class.
Osborne Wash, you can see it's pretty fast. You got to be on your toes though, because there's a lot of little gotchas that pop up in front of you. The crowd's up on the side of the hill there. You can't see very well, but you know, running washes like this, you got to be kind of careful, but yet you got to make your time up.
Long straightaway here, a chance for this team to really open it up. Here's the Cheneth Magnum, Rick Ellison, Bill Hernquist, 1,000 class action, actually in second place behind Eli Yee and Doug Fortin.
They're cruising pretty well right now. They're getting ready to go down into the finish area too. You can see that car looks clean. Doesn't look like they've had any trouble either.
Uphill climb here. They'll have a left-hander battling some dust, also some uneven terrain, as Jim Tucker and Richard Boyle from Ridgecrest, California, back in 7th place in the 1500 class.
Yeah, they're pushing pretty hard right now. You can see that's a silty area right there, right before they make that corner. A lot of guys probably almost get stuck there. Then they got to go across the highway, go up the hill, and that's the last little, about 20 miles into the finish area.
The 4108 machine, Noah Pike and Gail Pike in 4th place in the 4100 class, well back though of the leaders as this race is winding down.
This is their first race in that truck, so they're probably just getting to know it and understand what they really have underneath them right now.
And just ahead, the finish of the Blue Water Resort and Casino, Parker 425, right here on the Outdoor Channel Speed Zone. Welcome back to the Blue Water Resort and Casino, Parker 425. Well, below us, the beautiful Blue Water Resort and Casino, the staging point for all the race teams and the host of the first round of the Best in the Desert Racing Series. Taking a look at the final results in the 1500 class presented by Ford Trucks. The winner and overall winner, Dale Eberts, 6 hours, 52 minutes, 54 seconds, teaming up with Ernie Castro Jr. In second place, the brothers Mark and Gary Wyrick, time of 7 hours, 9 minutes, 10 seconds. And in third place, Chuck Hovey, 7 hours, 16 minutes, and 16 seconds.
We were fighting that transmission problem all day. Just kept popping out of gear. First lap, just popping out of third gear, and then next lap, it was popping out of second gear. So for a little while, I was a little frustrated. I thought, well, we're not going to be in the top 5 at all. And but the beautiful thing about off-road racing is you just stick with it and keep going, and we ended up third. So we were a little ways back, but we're happy.
Class 1000 results, the winning team with Eli Yee and Doug Fortin Jr. with a time of 7 hours, 36 minutes, and 21 seconds. Coming in second was Rick Ellison and Bill Hernquist with a time of 7 hours, 48 minutes, and 2 seconds. And third place, Bill Witt and Ben Flemmy with a time of 8 hours, 12 minutes, and 33 seconds.
The car ran pretty well. We had to get some temperature in it today. It was running real cool, and running too cool, these things don't have the best of performance, but we blocked off some of the radiator, got it to run a little warmer, and started to pick up some power out of it. It was a good day.
To the final results in the 1400 class presented by Ford Trucks, Mark Miller and Ryan Arciero, the winners in a time of 8 hours, 10 minutes, 54 seconds. Darren Skilton was second, 9:47.38, with Kyle Taylor and Smokey McKeel after rolling. They finished in a time of 11:33.54.
I made one mistake, was catching LeDuc, and we were going about 5 miles an hour, and I ran across some barbed wire fence, and it got caught up in the caliper. And so we lost a little bit of time, lost the brakes, had to pull into the pit, replace the caliper, got back going again, and about a mile from our driver change when Mark got in, we ran out of gas. So we were kind of, fighting in the back, and then Mark got in and did a phenomenal job. No problem. When he got in, no problems at all. No flat tires. BF Goodrich did an awesome job with tires today. I mean, we couldn't ask for anything more.
Class 1100 results brought to you by Ford Trucks. Now, winner of that class, Jeff Moore and Kirk Antilles with a time of 8 hours, 45 minutes, and 32 seconds. Bringing in second place was Toby and Tyler Guerin with a time of 8 hours, 48 minutes, and 5 seconds. And third place went to Tony, Gino, and Joe LaCitra with a time of 10 hours, 5 minutes, and 4 seconds.
I feel fine, a little sore, but I mean, these two guys, they did a heck of a job all day. They drove smart, kept their head in it, and didn't make no mistakes. We ran flawless.
The 2000 class results presented by Ford Trucks saw Aaron Hawley and Bob Matthews finish in a time of 8:51.41. Kevin and Ken Graves right behind him in second place at 9:22.09.
When you buy a 1600 car like this, yeah, that's how you choose to play. So it was great, a good run.
Class 7200 results brought to you by Ford Trucks. First place goes to Hector Salazar and Porfirio Gutierrez in a time of 8 hours, 56 minutes, and 33 seconds. Bringing up second place, Eric and Jared Harden with a time of 9 hours, 54 minutes, and 48 seconds. And third, Cody Kruger and Eric Davis with a time of 15 hours, 19 minutes, and 13 seconds.
We were probably not that prepared, but we were able to fix. We got slightly problems, and we were able to fix it, and we're here. We're more than happy to be doing off-road. That's what we like to do, yeah?
Yeah. This is a good race.
To the 8100 class results presented by Ford Trucks. It was Greg Fouts and Steve Wheeler, along with Mike Mounts, who finished first in a time of 9:26.39. Chad Hall, Court Staskopf were second at 10:21.12, and Dave Morrison and Manny Escara in third place at 10:21.55.
We got a little out of shape a couple times. We were coming out of the one wash about 75 miles into the course, you know, and it was a real bad soft area, and there was a truck stuck there before the last lap we went through, and I got a little overexcited, and we almost went into the tree and sideways and the whole bit. So
results for the 4100 class brought to you by Ford Trucks. Winners Mark Stein and Mike McComas with a time of 10 hours, 20 minutes, and 39 seconds. Bringing up a pretty close second place, Rod and Josh Hall with a time of 11 hours, 29 minutes, and 16 seconds. And third goes to John Sunderland Sr. and John Sunderland Jr. in a time of 12 hours, 27 minutes, and 36 seconds.
I tell you, it was there was a lot of high-speed stuff. There was some really rough, tight, and technical stuff. It was a testament of man and machine today, for sure.
8000 class results presented by Ford Trucks saw Keith Moore and William Barenko finish in a time of 10:28.27. Kurt LeDuc and Dick Sasser finished in second at 10:29.06. Mark Ottersberg, Rick Thomas finished up third at 12:34.54.
It'll be a lot of fun. Kurt's, I mean, obviously a extremely fast driver, and he had transmission problems today. That's one of the reasons that we were able to beat him today. I mean, we had some problems of our own. Obviously, you can see we flipped the truck over and had a few other little things, but we kept at it, and here we are. We had no idea we were that close to him coming into the finish line.
Class 7100 results brought to you by Ford Trucks show Malcolm Vinci and Mark Hansen with the win. Time at 10 hours, 49 minutes, and 41 seconds. Second place goes to Bob and Sean Graham in 13 hours, 5 minutes, and 5 seconds. And third place goes to Tim Braden and Mitch Griffin with a time of 15:05.17.
Oh my goodness, that Mark Hansen drove the first lap and he just killed him. Swear, I don't know how he got around there so quick, but he just left him in the dust.
3100 class results presented by Ford Trucks. John Holmes and Matthew Hutchins on top, 11:30.14. Mike Falkowski and Steve Howard were in second at 11:40 even. Scott Douglas and Jeremy Runyon came in third at 14:36.34. 7300 class results, again presented by Ford Trucks. Ian and Aaron Dixon finished on top in a time of 13:09.11. And finally, the 5100 class results presented by Ford Trucks. Jasper Dyer and Tony French took the victory at 6:49.56. Mike and Ray Harris were second at 7:31.07. Welcome back to the Blue Water Resort and Casino, Parker 425, and round number one of the Best in the Desert Racing Series. Race action has drawn to a close from Parker, Arizona, and as a fire roars by the banks of the Colorado River, it's getting late, but that hasn't stopped Casey Folks of the Best in the Desert Racing Series to shake each and every competitor's hand as they cross the finish line. And with that said, it's time to take a look back at some of the action in this edition of the Outdoor Channel Speed Zone Action Rewind, presented by Skyjacker Shocks. The Action Rewind honors would have to go to the Inland Trust Race team of Dale Eberts. Eberts and his team of Ernie Castro Jr. and Skylar Falcon put together a race vehicle well suited for the Parker 425 course. And after getting a great start, the Inland Trust team just had to concentrate on holding off the competition in the very tough 1500 class. And not only would they hold off the 18 other very tough competitors, but also the entire field of 123 vehicles as they would take the overall victory from the Parker 425 and round number one of the Best in the Desert Racing Series, as that's your Action Rewind presented by Skyjacker Suspensions.
Well, attrition played a major role in this race, Greg. We saw nearly 130 teams take the green flag in this one, but not every team finished It was tough out there, especially on lap number 1.
Yeah, we saw a lot of rolled over cars and trucks on the first lap. Seems like the guys that kept their heads on for the first lap made it to the finish.
And Redemption isn't that far off. Pahrump, Nevada is the next stop on the schedule, the Terrible Town 250.
There's lots of work the guys need to do to their vehicles now. They're torn up a little bit. They'll get them together for the next race.
So until then, on behalf of off-road racer Greg Fouts and our entire crew, I'm Ian Howard saying so long once again from the beautiful Blue Water Resort and Casino here in Parker, Arizona. And we'll see you next time on the dirt right here on the Outdoor Channel Speed Zone.